I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You're the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. Randy Robinson here. You know, over the years, but starting in my 20s, I've been to some places around the world where I've seen some things that change you. You know, whether it's an AIDS orphanage in Romania, some of the orphanages in China, starving children in clinics in Africa. These things weigh on you, and I had to work through some of these. When I think of our military and some of the things that they see and they experience, I don't even understand, you know, how sometimes you cope with these things. These are hard, heavy things, life and death things. And so it's no wonder that PTSD is something that a lot of our military veterans suffer from. And it can be a lifetime. And it breaks my heart because these are men and women who have put themselves up for the ultimate sacrifice. And yet, oftentimes, as a society, we don't seem to know how to handle it. I think we're getting better at it. I think the church sometimes has lagged behind, but I think we're getting better at it. And so you're going to hear the story today of one man who spent some time in a war zone, and it affected him. And he has been able to turn that around. Instead of becoming an experience of destruction, it has become an experience of redemption, and one that he now helps other men and women with. So glad you're here. Salute to all of those who are serving or have served our country. And if you know somebody who's in the military, close to the military family, hit that share button and let them know that we're talking about, in a sense, them today, part of their family. Ben Peterson is my guest, and he has a book that just dropped out. It's called Engage Your Destiny. It's really, it's moving beyond sometimes the trauma, and frankly, that trauma can be anything in your life. It doesn't have to be related to the military, but moving beyond that thing that holds us back and stepping into our God-given purpose in this life. Ben, man, welcome. Good to see you. By the way, I interviewed Ben on broadcast. It has not aired yet, so I just saw him very recently, but you're getting to see this early, so kudos to all you guys who have subscribed and liked and followed online. Sometimes you get things a little quicker than the broadcast.
Get some little treats there.
Yeah, right. I know. How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Doing good, man. It's been too long. I'm telling you. We need more quality time.
Was that? And this is so sad, but was that last week or was that 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Okay, that's what I thought. All right, we're doing shows again, thus the jacket. But
so I must have done something right in order to get the follow up. You know, we got to be doing something right here.
Well, you know what's funny is we've got sort of two teams here that go through guests. There's the broadcast, and then there's some of the online, and we do crossover. We do talk. But I hadn't seen any kind of guest pitch for you, and then they were like, I was like, who's this? So we did the broadcast show, and I'm sitting there going, I need him online because we can talk a little freer and a little longer, so we get to hear more.
Yeah, we need a little more quality time.
Yeah, so we'll cover some of the same things. Let's back up and let's walk you into the military. Because my Lord, you joined young, which just compounds things, frankly, in my mind. But tell us about what led up to the military, and then walk us through some of the experiences you had.
Yeah, so I joined in 2004, which was, 3 years after 9/11. And I knew when 9/11 happened that I wanted to serve in the military and, take the fight back to the people who did those indescribable acts to us. I think a part of this story that is so important in understanding military people and the challenges that we have in our military culture is that about 60% of those who join the military, Randy, will have a past of physical or sexual abuse, and they'll grow up in homes that are more broken or have a lot more issues. And so, I grew up in a family with a lot of trauma. I have some abuse in my past and some sexual abuse as a child from gals in my daycare. And they are finding, in the science that you either, take those experiences and become a predator, become a repeater of those things, or it puts this indescribable desire in you to want to be a protector. And, I got bullied quite a bit in high school. I really didn't, become more athletic until I joined the military at 17. And there was just this indescribable, desire in me to fight, to hurt people that are hurting innocent people. And, as the research has come out and we're understanding more about the challenges that people bring into the military, which helps us understand PTSD so much more, a lot of the issues that our veterans in our military are dealing with today, I mean, they have to do with combat, obviously, but a lot of it is what we're bringing in. And then that combat is just the match on the gasoline that's already there. And so, to really round out your point, I joined the military because I wanted to fight, I wanted to protect, and I wanted to become not that kid that was being bullied, but a person who could be a defender and be a fighter.
So is that why you aim for the special forces? Because I mean, that's aiming high. I mean, geez.
Yeah, that'll do it. No, I didn't get to do that job. So yeah, I joined to join the special forces, and I wanted to go all the way and be that all powerful warrior. But I failed the colorblind test, and that was I got about a 4 out of 20 on that. And people wonder, hey, do you really need to see colors that well? And I just say to them, well, if they ask you to cut the green wire,
yeah, yeah,
got to know what color green is. So yeah, I lost that SF slot.
So they gave you a couple different choices then. What were your choices, and why'd you make the one you made?
Yeah. So the first was an administrative specialist, which that was a death. Yeah, that's a death sentence right there. And then the other one was a chaplain's assistant, and I was like, man, what's that? I actually said, which one do I have a better chance of killing terrorists? And they said, well, maybe chaplain's assistant. Maybe. And the only, real responsibilities of the chaplain assistant is to assist the chaplain when he's in ministry, but then also to be his bodyguard when you're in combat. And that was the first time, Randy, I really felt that sense from the Lord. I have a calling on your life, and I'm putting something into your path that I'm calling you to, and I sensed that it was the right call.
Then, did you have? I mean, you're talking about God. Was there already a foundation there?
I had gotten saved about 2 months before. So the bully of our high school, his name was Jason, got radically saved at a Pentecostal prayer meeting on like a Tuesday night that his aunt drug him to. And this kid was vicious, man. He was a bully. He was all over. Like he would rip off his like toenails and try to stab people with them. Like always in detention and suspension. Like this guy was a terror. And it was a Saul to Paul conversion. I mean, he got radically saved. And he brought that fire back to our Catholic high school. And it was Jason Anderson that led me to Christ. And he started this like Monday night worship service. And I experienced the presence of Jesus. And I just said, I'll follow you wherever you want me to go, and I dedicated my life to the Lord. And 2 months later, I'm becoming a chaplain's assistant.
Wow. Okay. So what does that look like? I mean, is that in the combat zone, in the field? What chaplain's assistant do?
Yeah, so you're basically the eyes and ears of the unit and what's going on, because a lot of those young grunts are not going to talk to a captain or an officer, right? But they're going to talk to another, grunt, right? So that's part of your job. But then also, you are assisting him in ministering, because you have one chaplain for every about 800 to 1,000 soldiers.
Jeez.
Those are a lot of needs. And so I don't want to hear any pastors complain. You have no idea what it's like to take care of 800 to 1,000 people, plus the majority of them being complete heathens that have a ton of issues. So, in that context, you're supporting him in managing all those people. And there's death notifications, there's Red Cross notifications, there's services that you're planning, there's Bible studies that you're planning. But then also, when you're out in combat, you're going everywhere that he goes, and you're really his bodyguard, because chaplains don't carry weapons.
So where did that land you?
So we got to Iraq in 2008, and on the 6th day of my tour, 7 of my guys were killed. We had a Chinook helicopter that went down, and we got a notification. My chaplain came, woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and told me that we had a fallen angel. 7 of our guys are gone, and that was like hey, welcome to combat. It's this is real. We're not playing with toy bullets, and we're not in a training environment. People are dying. And so, that was really hard. And those guys that died, they were husbands, they were fathers, they were brothers, they were amazing men. And, a handful of them were from Texas. A few others were from Oklahoma. And, man, one of the guys on there was First Sergeant Rodriguez. And He was the Delta Company first sergeant, and he was just an incredible man, incredible leader, and his death was quite devastating, especially to the guys who reported to him. And so, we went right into, hey, we got to minister to countless people who are devastated, but we also got to pull off a memorial service. And we're still replacing the unit we're there to replace, on top of being a combat aviation brigade. So if anyone's calling in medevacs, gunships, or rides in between bases, those are our guys on helicopters. So the war doesn't stop just because people die. And so you have to figure all this out, care for the living, nurture, and honor the dead. And man, while operating in a war zone.
It feels academic, but we have discussions. I've had them online, had them in the studio, had them at our church, of this great, long-standing question of if God is good, why would he allow bad things to happen? Why would he allow suffering? And we all see it at some degree, but I mean, it could be, the loss of an elderly parent or something. But it almost just, I don't know. I don't want to downplay the question for those who have faced it on this side, but when you're talking about a bunch of young men, fathers, husbands, killed in a helicopter crash or something like that, and so many times things like this, you go, that shouldn't have happened. Yeah. How did?
And I think about. Oh no, go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering that, because now that becomes very, very real, and you got a bunch of people who probably don't know God, or maybe have warped images of him, asking that question. How do you answer that one?
Yeah. And it's also harder to answer because I flew on hundreds of helicopter rides and went on, convoys and all these types of things. And, none of those things happened to me.
Yeah.
And so you're asking that question of why, why am I alive? Why are they gone? And, there was a helicopter ride one morning out of Baghdad where we got some rockets shot at us. And, I remember we were diving at the ground as I looked over and I saw these, the trails of, because these helicopters, they have the flares that get shot out to try to detract the rockets, right?
Yeah.
I see these flares coming out and the rockets flying by, and and I'm looking out there and I look at the ground and I remember I said, Jesus, I'm ready, and I thought in that moment that I was going to die fully. I thought, this is it, my life is over, and to have that extreme of an encounter, well, before we hit the ground, the pilot pulls up and he's using that as an evasive maneuver to get out of there. But it's those kind of moments where you're like, wow, this is really it. And then you say, well, why didn't those rockets hit? Why was I able to make it out of there alive? And those are hard questions to answer, because when we're asking the question why, we're really getting into the hard issue of, not trusting God in the path that has happened and has been laid out for me.
Yeah.
And so then it comes back to relationship, right? And who am I in relationship with? And do I have people in my life that I can trust? And I think a lot of things, then this is getting deep into the weeds, but I think a lot of this comes back to trust issues that we learn from infancy of growing up with, whether we had a secure attachment to a healthy mother or father.
Yeah.
In that first year of life, the baby's brain is connecting directly to everything that's going on in that caregiver's brain. And that's where we're learning how we build relationships and trust. And I think in our fatherless generation today, where 50% of Gen Z is growing up in a fatherless home, there's a lot more asking of why, because we don't have primary caregivers truly meeting the needs of kids.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
It might be a longer answer than you wanted, but that's what I come back to, man. I just think we've completely lost the relational connection that we have to have through secure parenting in America.
Well, and then when you get into a life and death situation, you got to have that relationship, I believe, with God, And what's funny is, some of the circles I've been in, they're all about how big is your faith? And it's like a mustard seed, and Jesus says that's enough. That's enough. I'll show up for that. Yeah. I'll show up for that.
Because that's having faith, and that's having that relational aspect of how we're going to really, really, trust God. And so if you're listening to this and you're really struggling in your relationship with God, and you're struggling with, trusting him, man, there's a reason that your foundation has been laid with that, with having trust issues. And I would go back to some healing and forgiveness with your mom or your dad and how they raised you in those first couple of years. I know I've had to do that.
Yeah. You've had to do a lot of hard work, and kudos to you for doing it. There was another thing, though, I think that you talk about in the book that was certainly traumatic. and kind of in a little different direction. When the suicide bomber went into that school, tell us what happened then.
Yeah, so we had a suicide bomber walk into a school outside of our base, and it was a Shiite Sunni thing between their two sects of religion. And he went in there and blew himself up and killed about a dozen kids, wounded several dozen more. And that local town did not have the capacity to handle a mass casualty of that size. And so when they, when our, base basically found out about it, they sent in quick reaction force QRF teams to go in and rescue a bunch of those kids. And they brought them back to our base hospital. And that's because we're Americans, man. Americans are awesome. They're some of the most compassionate soldiers and people in the world. And, I was in the ER with my chaplain after they brought those kids in and, saw some really hard things and saw little kids with, really, really horrific injuries to their face, to their limbs. And that was a moment that definitely scarred my soul. It was one of the hardest things I've ever seen.
Yeah, no doubt. And the interesting thing about that is I mean, you're over there, we're fighting against, the Muslim extremists, Arabs mainly.
Yeah.
And yet when the Arabs in Iraq, the local people are attacked by the, people who are also Muslims and Arabs, you guys rushed in to help, which that makes me proud to be an American, right? That makes me stand up and salute our military. But at the same time, now you're seeing not your guys getting hurt, but sort of the other people. Did that change? I mean, not to say you're more compassionate prior to that, but I mean, when you go into war, you're going into fight, and to win a war.
Yeah.
Did that shift your perspective from just sort of an us and them to all God's people kind of attitude?
It's a good question. I mean, honestly, I never thought about it at the time. I was so beat up by what I saw, and it was very traumatizing. Seeing little kids with their faces, missing and things like that, and damage like that. And so I guess, when you're in those kind of situations, you kind of go into a freeze and it's a fight or flight. Like, what do I need to do to get through this situation and get out of it, right?
Yeah.
And so and part of that was, being in that combat zone and just going, man, what do I need to do to be here and to honor God and to get out alive, right?
Yeah.
But I do think it gave me a deeper and fiercer hatred for the terrorist type groups and for the people just because of how evil they are. And I also think it gave me a perspective of how soft and just coddled Americans are. There's a great book, The Coddling of the American Mind.
Yeah.
And I just don't think people realize how evil this world is, and specifically with our open border, to not protect from the kind of people that there's a great line in The Dark Knight where it says some men just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah.
And that's true. And I've seen those men and what they want to do, and they just want to watch the world burn. And to think that there aren't people out there like that, it's a total deception from the enemy so he can steal, kill, and destroy. But to think that in other places of the world, I mean, in Pakistan, you can be murdered in the street for being a Christian or for being gay, of that matter.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, so yes, there are places in the world where sheer evil exists. And I do think we've been coddled from that, and that it's actually made us quite vulnerable and weak.
Yeah, at the same time, I thank God for it, because it is a mess out there. And what's interesting is some of the attitudes we cultivate here in the West and in America specifically, I mean, Canada, much of Europe. When you get out there and you see the suffering in the world, it's just like, all that stuff's academic. It doesn't make sense. When I was just in Burundi last year, and I've been to a lot of places in Africa, and of course our teams go all the time, and you see the suffering of a child. You don't care what color the child's skin is. You just want the suffering to end, and if there's anything you can do about it, you do. And then you come back here and you get all these people talking about race or whatever, and you're like, that doesn't matter. It's just get over it. Come on, can we just help people who are hurting? And anyway, it does. It just shifts things entirely. I want to move on. Well, let me show people your book real quick. I'm talking to Ben Peterson. This is his book, Engage Your Destiny. It's available right now wherever you get books. You can also go to engageyourdestiny.org for the book and for more about Ben and the ministry he's doing now. And I've talked so much on the front end about your experience over there. Tell us what happened when you got back, because it wasn't easy when you got back home.
Yeah, I definitely hit a tough patch. I was in a really dark place after I started having nightmares and dreams, about children and the things that I saw. And in those dreams, I was a villain. I was an evil person that was doing horrific things. And then I'd wake up just horrified by myself, by those dreams, by what was happening. And, shame will destroy a man. Guilt says I've done something bad. Shame takes on the identity that I am bad, that something is wrong with me. And when something as personal as intimate happens in your dreams, where you're being a villain in your dreams, that brings out a level of shame. And so I think I was battling a lot of shame. I was battling a lot of, undealt with issues from my childhood, my upbringing, and the struggles of my parents and with their substance abuse issues and emotional health issues. And then getting into, actually experiencing manifestations of PTSD where I just couldn't calm down. And so I really hit that low point, and I really had a dark night of the soul where I was asking why, and definitely having some very dark thoughts of taking my life. And it was that night that I called a mentor of mine, and he picked up the phone, and we just began to talk about what was going on and why this was happening. And I was asking that question that we really started this interview off with, is why, why is this happening to me? And so often in the middle of pain and suffering and struggle, we just want an understanding of, man, if I could just have some meaning to this pain, I think I can soldier on and get through it. And he really talked to me about the disciples and how when they lost Jesus, they felt the exact same way. They felt abandoned, they felt depressed, they felt broken. But beneath the death of Jesus was the greatest victory the world has ever known. But the disciples just couldn't see it. They were lost in their pain. And so Scott said, it's the same with you. Beneath all of your pain is a victory greater than you can imagine. And you're going to do greater things than even you've dreamt of yet. But you have to trust God, because he took the disciples' pain and used it to change the world. 12 people, it's turned into now 2.6087314 billion people today, estimated that follow Jesus. I mean, 12 to that number is insane. And Scott said, if you'll trust God, he'll do the same with you, because he's no respecter of men.
And at the core of that is the idea of resurrection, because the confusion, the darkness was because they experienced death, which you've experienced, but they hadn't seen the resurrection yet. What was your sort of spiritual resurrection that gave you purpose and allowed you to engage your destiny, as your ministry says?
Yeah, I think it was when I started the ministry, and I really saw, because for so many years after, Randy, that I got out, I didn't want people to know I was a veteran. And I was very ashamed of basically the PTSD and the traumatic things that had happened. And I really hid it. I didn't talk about it. And so when I started the ministry and I really felt the calling towards the military, it really pushed me and forced me to tell my story, and to open up and to heal. And, people, I think we over spiritualize or overcomplicate a calling or a direction that God's leading us into. The way that I characterize it is when I am spending time with God and I am spending time praying and I'm doing things of faith, it's ideas or something that he's put on my heart that keeps coming up over and over again. And I can't shake it, right? It won't go away. Yeah. And right now I've got a book idea that I'm working on for a second book, and I'm scared to do it. But it's come up to me probably about 15 times. And I know for sure that God's calling me to do this, because when I spend time with him, he's putting it on my heart. And I just think that's one of the core principles. And I talk about this in the book of how to really hear from the Lord and to hear about your destiny and your calling. But that's one of the key principles. And so, with that, again, following and reaching military and soldiers and helping them know Jesus and then discipling them into their destinies, doing that work over the last 8 years with our active duty military and our veteran population has been my life's work. It's been very fun.
I love it. And don't stop, don't stop listening to that still small voice, the hound of heaven. I forget who said that, but what a great,
he chases us down.
There you go. So here's a question, because whether someone is suffering from a traumatic experience in the military or just in an abusive family, whatever the trauma, That person that is feeling like they're just under a cloud and the cloud's not going away. They don't see any hope at all. They're questioning what if life is even worth it, you know. What would you say to them as someone who's walked through that?
Yeah. You know, it's such a simple answer. But you know, there are so many good Christian counselors out there today. And you can go on to Psychology Today and you can Google and you can get a list of people right in your city that follow Jesus and can walk with you through, because there's a multitude and a wisdom of counselors, and the Holy Spirit is the great counselor. And so, you know, sitting down with someone and processing these things, and I think that this is where I would boil it down to: if you more often than not are not okay, as opposed to just being okay with who you are, if you're in a position where you have you struggle with deep personal relationships and you have like an avoidance to you where you try to get away from people, or your entire identity is built off of what people think of you, and your love is not based on just being secure with who you are, but you know, who other people are defining you to be and their actions towards you, you've got some trauma issues. And so with those, you know, sitting down with someone who loves Jesus and is trained in these kinds of things to process them in a healthy way is very healthy, because, you know, I got baptized in the I got saved at 17. I got baptized in the Holy Spirit when I was 20. I got married at 33 years old. I'm 37, and the last 4 years have probably been some of the hardest years of my life in navigating marriage with my wife as my primary attached relationship. And so much of that has had to do with my past and things that I didn't deal with. And I just pled the blood over my life, and I just believed on Jesus, and I just believed for miracles. But there were areas of my brain that had not been reworked, that had not been processed. There were traumatic things that had happened in my life that I had not sat down and really worked through. And so I believe in there's power in the process. And through that work of going in and working through things, it's giving me testimonies, it's given me authority, it's giving me the ability to speak into other people's lives who have gone through those things. And so that's where I just am such a proponent of digging in and not just reading the Bible and saying, hey, that's enough. Well, through the truth of the Bible, he uses people to set us free with the power of Isaiah 61 to set captives free. So that's what I would say.
Do you have peace?
Yeah, I've found a lot of peace. I think I have found the most peace in understanding where my insatiable desire for love has come from. Because, you know, growing up, I was an only child, grew up at home. My dad had obsessive compulsive disorder. My mom had borderline personality disorder. My home was chaos. And so, you know, I learned at a very young age, in order to get attention, in order to get love, I had to perform, I had to do. And that's performance-based love, instead of just being loved for who you are because you're my son, which is what the Father calls us to. And so, you know, when you have this insatiable desire for love, you're looking, every relationship you have, you're looking to be loved from them. When you don't get enough, because it's never enough, you're turning to sugar, you're turning to food, you're turning to porn, you're turning to alcohol, you're turning to anything that can give you a feeling of love, but a break from yourself. And that will destroy you, because the enemy uses those things to steal, kill, and destroy. And so, you know, that's where understanding where my issues of love have come from, I have found so much peace in who I am, because one of the foundational pieces of our emotional development is self-awareness and understanding, oh, I'm having a feeling because of my wife's sharp tone, that this visceral feeling coming out of my body is me not feeling loved, and now I'm angry, and now I want to hurt her feelings, right? There's an issue there. And so if I can have a self-awareness that, oh, this is actually coming from this area of my life, and this is from, you know, this issue that I had as a younger child, now I'm giving meaning to it, and I can find victory from it.
You have done a lot of work, I can tell. A lot of hard work, and you keep doing it, and that's a beautiful thing. And if you're watching and you're like, I hear him, I'm just not there. I mean, it's a resource. We're not here to sell books. The book is not for your entertainment. The book is for your growth, and it's called Engage Your Destiny. And the subtitle: Practical Ways to Run After Your God-Given Purpose. And I think that is, if you're there and you're like, man, I am stuck and I don't know what my purpose is, I want to learn how to run after it, It's a good resource there for you. You can also check out Ben's website. It is engageyourdestiny.org. And when you hit that, it looks just like this. And if you know someone that just needs to, to hear from someone who's been where they've been, share this with them. I mean, we're here to get you out of that dark place, to say, yes, there is hope no matter where you're at, no matter what you've done, what you've seen, there is hope for you. There is light on the other side of that dark valley, and just keep walking. And so we've got some people that'll walk with you. Yeah. Last word to you,
Randy, real quick.
Yeah, last word to you.
Yeah, real quick. So if you're a military or a veteran, go to engageyourdestiny.org. If you know anyone who's struggling with PTSD, with suicidal issues, all of that, we have a team of partners that we've worked with, and we have gotten hundreds, and I do mean hundreds, of veterans and military into programs for their mental health, their emotional health, their PTSD. We have so many resources. It's amazing, and we would love to serve you and help you. And then if you want to support the ministry and what we're doing, we are ministering to soldiers full-time on multiple active duty bases right now, and discipling them in the teachings of Jesus. And if you want to support that, we'd love to walk with you. Please reach out to us.
What a great thing to do. And do it now. If God's put it on your heart, whenever you're watching this, live replay, doesn't matter. Do it now. Appreciate all you guys watching. Do hit that share button if you want to bless somebody else. And if you haven't liked, followed, or subscribed, do that. You'll get more notifications of wonderful interviews just like this. Ben Peterson, again, thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks, buddy. See you guys.
Appreciate all you guys being here. Come back. We got more for you here on Life Today Live.